Hey y'all, it's Michael. So in this video, I am going to be talking about works by Edwin Danticat. First I'm going to start off by The Dew Breaker. I have read her Crick Crack and her other story, Breath, Ice, Memory. And I was thinking, I was like, why not just go through her fiction bibliography? Because she has 5 of them. I think her other ones categorized under nonfiction, and then she wrote some children novels and some young adult. The way these review videos usually goes is what I would give you my first impression, the middle, and then at the end. So that's what I'm gonna do. So currently like this, I read a little bit of this last night, and I'm on I just finished the first chapter. I don't know that much about this, but it seems really intriguing. Because this is basic. It starts off with Ka, who is delivering she's a sculptor, and she's delivering a sculpture to one of her patrons. Finds out when she wakes up, because she's riding along with her dad has gone missing, and she doesn't know where her dad is. Come to find out, he actually threw it into the lake because the sculpture that she made was actually of him, and she's wondering what is going on. But then he says that he has a secret, and I'm wondering what that is because I actually haven't read the back of it. So I finally finished The Dew Breaker by Edwidge Danticat, and so I thought I would give you all my final thoughts. First off, this is told actually in short stories. Now here's the thing, nowhere on here, I'm looking at it even now, it says stories or like short stories, and so I approached this novel differently because I am so used to reading short stories. I categorize short stories and I approach them and look at them differently, literally, if that makes any sense. And because this is told in short stories, but it's not stated as a short story, I am looking at this as a collective, overall long novel, and it just happens to be told in short stories, if that makes any sense. This is about basically the Dew Breakers. Now, see, that is the first short story from the perspective of the people affected by the Dew Breaker, this man who tortured people. Since this is told in a way that it is broken, everything feels disjointed. But for me, I think the last chapter, which is called the Dew Breaker, or story, I guess you could say, puts everything in perspective, and that's why I really like this, because I read this like very slowly since work has been kicking my butt and I haven't had time to read that much, so I've only been reading like a chapter a day, a short story a day. I'm gonna call them chapters, but they're short stories, but yeah, they're chapters. And at the end, I thought, I was like, wow, this is how everything connects essentially. And I thought it was fantastic because this is a way of telling a story very differently. And I know the amount of planning you have to do to make sure everything fits. And that's what I love the most about this, because it's almost like a puzzle. And I love those type of books. Books that don't necessarily make, like, it's not cohesive in a way that a traditional story would be told, but in the end, I think it comes together so well. It's told from the victims, from the spectators, from the family, from the friends. To me, it has this gut punching way, in a way that I don't want to say I empathize. I felt sympathy for the torturer, but I understood him as a person. I really empathize with the people that were affected by his actions. And it does talk about things in here, especially now in these current times, with Black Lives Matter. Like, even things that are mentioned in here are still, that's what people are fighting for right now. Now, this is a book that I would recommend very hesitantly, because since it's done in this short story form, I would recommend not approaching it that way. And I think that's what I really enjoy about Dandicat's writing, because especially with the short stories that I have read from her, it has this disjointed parts to it. And even though they're telling different stories and different characters and whatnot, there is this connection. There is this sense of like dots being connected. The next story that I'm reading from her is The Farming of Bones. Now, I have started on this like partially. I'm on page 33, and it feels, okay, it feels, I don't know if it's going to be, it feels just like one cohesive finish to the end story. Now, I say it feels like it because there's this, I don't know what Dandicat is doing, but there's this parts where it's going back and forth between two, it feels like two timelines, and I'm sure they will connect, or somehow they're gonna connect. All right, y'all, so I finally finished The Farming of Bones by Edwidge Danticat, so I thought I would let y'all know my final thoughts about it before I get to the final book of this video. Overall, I was really indecisive about this, especially rating it on Goodreads. It was really between a 2 and a 3 stars for me. I was on the fence about this one. I think this goes along with Breath Ice Memory as my least favorite. And I think that's because tonally, this is really all over the place in my opinion. So this is about Amabel, and this takes place between in the reign of Trogelio. I hope I'm pronouncing that right. And it takes place between Haiti and actually the Dominican Republic, like literally in the border. And so if you know like a little bit of history, then you know that the massacre happens during this time. So we follow Amabel, and she is actually a servant. Now it says on here servant. I don't know if it's a servant or if she was enslaved. Not a side story, but there is a plot dealing with her and her lover Sebastian, and how she is coping with the family that she is serving. You can kind of hear it in my voice, like how trying to explain what this book is really about. And I think why I don't enjoy it as much is that tonally I don't know what it's trying to be, because it's like it has this romance aspect to it between Amabel and Sebastian, which is kind of cool because it goes back and forth, written in a way where the bold print, where the actual sentences are bold, it gives this like very almost conscious stream of conscious point of view, dealing with Amabel and like her relationship with Sebastian. And then when it goes into normal font, it actually is just like the main story, and then also like flashing back with her family and how she lost her parents essentially, like this story about the family that she's serving, and then also how she essentially escapes. I don't know if that is a like a spoiler. So going back and forth between these two plot points, I think this is really interesting reading it in this point of her bibliography, because if I were to read this first, I think it would have been a little bit I don't know, like skew-wise anyways, because I know how Danticat can write multiple perspectives and it actually comes together and I actually enjoy it. But here I feel as though it doesn't work as well with her going between these two basically two stories, I guess, two different point of views. And I feel as though it has no, for me, it felt as though it really wasn't cohesive, because at one point, yes, it gets really violent, like it gets extremely violent and extremely graphic, and it was so weird because like I felt as though it didn't really like mesh together, especially with her and the plot line of her trying to be with Sebastian. So I thought it was just all over the place in that regard. But there are points in here where the language is really great. Like it is, I was like, oh, that's a really nice sentence and whatnot. But overall, I felt as though that those two conflicting points really didn't go together for me, and that really also hinders on Amabel. Amabel, I felt as though, as a character wise, I empathize with her and like the things that she was going through. But overall, I was just like, I don't think she's as memorable as she could have been in that regard. And all the other side characters, a lot of them just like come and go, and then at the end, it doesn't really like come together in my opinion. So the final book actually within her adult fiction bibliography that I'm going to be tackling is Claire of the Sea Light. This is the last one. I actually just started on it. First impression, this actually, I think it's pretty good. The beginning it's so cool. It is so cool because it comes out of nowhere. The story starts going backwards, and the way that this is where I think Danticat, again, like if you watch my video, especially when I talk about her short story collection, she knows how to layer like plot points and the story and the characters. And this is, I think, like, I was like, oh, this is really good, because the beginning is actually going backwards and it starts layering on what essentially happens. So as she starts going backwards, you, as the reader, we get more information. The stories that I enjoy from Danticat really more involve of like multiple perspective within one central point, and it seems to be like she really excels at that, because like this Even like the do breaker, I think like that like she really knows how to do it, and she's layering the story right now because it's really interesting. I'll tell y'all the plot of it once I get to know more about it. But so far, first impression wise, I'm really liking this one. So first off, someone is mowing the lawn, just to let y'all know now. So I don't know how I'm gonna have to fight with it in post, but someone's always mowing the lawn. Claire the Sea Light. Overall, you know what? I like this. I don't think it was per se my favorite out of Danticat's work. This story is about essentially Claire, and as I mentioned in the beginning, the story starts actually going backwards, and we see how essentially Claire is born, and it kind of jumps forward. This I think works because since this is told in multiple perspective around Claire essentially, I think I think Danika's idea of going backwards, I don't know if she really thought about this, but in my mind, she thought about it, is that her going backwards and then telling other perspective and other people from the village, their side of how everything starts to connect, I think it actually works tremendously because it kind of feels as though it gives a propellant to the story. And I say this because that's sometimes I feel as a reader, I don't get a satisfaction of when I read a story like in multiple perspective, like similar to this, where it's one central story or it's one central main point. It's almost like a clever trick. I thought that was like, oh, that is actually really, really smart. This, I think, I really enjoyed more in the multiple perspectives and say than say the do breaker. Just because I felt as though the characters here, I felt a little bit more. I liked them better. You know what? I'm just gonna say it. I like the characters here better than in the do breaker. Her layering of the stories and the plots, layering the plots and how they're essentially at the end stack up. I think it works because there is a revelation because something's introduced in the beginning and then at the end I was like, oh my gosh, yes. So I was like, yes, yes, yes. I thought I was like, oh, that's really interesting. It was so cool reading multiple perspective, and then when you get a little bit of a reference from like the previous story, or it would also like mention things that you expect, like, oh, I bet we're gonna follow this character soon because it seems to be prevalent in this story, so how is that gonna connect later on? I think the one thing that I'm very hesitant about this, or like my least memorable perspective about it, and if I were to say like the thing I didn't like about this, I'm not gonna lie, and it's awful because I'm like reviewing the story right now. I don't think I can particularly articulate what I don't like about this novel because everything about it, everything mainly is fine in my opinion. Like, I don't think it ever reached like wowness for me personally, but if I were looking at it through like the general perspective, I thought I was like, okay, this is pretty good. For this last part, I'm just gonna give y'all a little bit about my overall thoughts. I thought it was great. I think overall, one thing I really appreciate Danticat is her ability to write, like I mentioned a lot now, you're probably tired of hearing it, is the way she layers her stories. As from a writing perspective, I really like that. I thought it was really cool. And she is one of those few authors that I can't think off the top of my head where her style of storytelling is very different, I guess you could say, or like very unique, because I haven't read, maybe if I were to think about it more deeply, of an author where they choose this writing style of multiple perspectives and multiple stories within this one central pinpointing, I guess you could say. The thing I also appreciate is that all her characters are always from Haiti or somewhere from the Caribbean. I had a good time actually reading her all her adult fiction. I'm wondering what she's gonna be able to write in the future. I am, because since I didn't have I guess the most successful or my most favorite with the Farming of Bones, I just kind of want to see what she would be able to do with a full-on, just like one cohesive plot line, like one just zoom. Because like even with some of the short stories, I felt, now this might be me, the conspiracy in me, but I felt, now I read Crick Crack way back when, but I could have sworn I was like, is that a character from Crick Crack? Like, I don't know, maybe it's just me. I don't know. Because there were some stories in in her other short story collection. I was like, huh, I wonder if that's that character, because the stories tend to like meld together, but they're different. If that makes any sense. So I was like, because like maybe she changed the names or something. But I was just like, that's. I thought that was like really interesting. I bet these are all connected. And I actually, now I think about it, I think all her stores are. I wonder if all her stores are connected. That'd be really interesting for her. Yeah, that's actually a really good question. So yeah, overall, I really did enjoy it. If you read any of her novels, let me know. I would love to hear your thoughts. So I guess now I'm just stuck waiting for whenever her next novel comes. So yeah, until then, I'll see you guys till next time. Bye.